The lack of greenery has been harmful to some of our poorest communities. There's a community in the South Bronx that has so much air pollution due to the lack of greenery and, of course, due to other reasons, has so much air pollution that they actually call the area Asthma Alley. About 20% of the people that live there suffer from asthma due to reasons beyond their control. We need to tackle this issue through every possible angle, including by adding greenery, and this is why I'm very proud of this bill. We need to make sure that we create better communities for everyone. I want to thank all my colleagues. I especially want to thank Speaker Adams for ensuring that this bill got to the finish line. Look very forward to seeing all the positive results that are going to result from this bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you.
Next, we will vote on two bills that will bolster support for fire emergency victims. Introduction 89, sponsored by Councilmember Pirina Sanchez, would require an agency designated by the mayor to provide notice to council members of certain serious fires located within their districts. These notifications would need to be sent within 3 hours of the fire department's deployment to the scene of the fire and contain specific information relating to the incident. I invite Councilmember Sanchez to discuss her important bill. Pirina here? No? Okay. Okay. We'll hear from her later on, I believe, in Stated, so if you guys join us in Stated today. Introduction 6A, sponsored by Councilmember Alexa Aviles, would require the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, in consultation with the Fire Department and Department of Buildings, to develop procedures to ensure that occupants of multiple dwellings receive relevant information in connection with the issuance of residential vacate orders following fires. This bill would require HPD to designate a person on site to distribute relevant materials to occupants of the building, inform occupants of their rights and their landlord's responsibilities, and provide information in the designated citywide languages on where occupants can find additional resources. I invite Councilmember Aviles to the podium to talk about her legislation.
Thank you, Speaker. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councilmember Alexa Aviles, representing District 38 in Brooklyn, proudly representing that community. Today, Intro 6 is especially important to me because it comes directly from the lived experience of residents in our district who have been impacted by fires, many of whom are non-English speaking. Sadly, in my short tenure here, we have experienced over 10 fires displacing hundreds of residents in our district. And this emergency, the scene that often you see is people in total distress with no information, overwhelmed by what has just happened to them, and very little access to actually language properly translated information to help guide them along the way. And still, when the city offers support, there's still very little information around their rights and responsibilities of landlords, particularly when buildings are ordered to be vacated and folks are left to their own devices while trying to pick up their lives in the midst of tragedy. And so this bill really comes from that experience over and over again, where residents experienced no ability to get their belongings, no information of where they should go, no information of when the vacate orders actually are being lifted, and do they have a right to return, and where would they get support to be able to address the things that they are needed. So I am so grateful to the Speaker and to my colleagues, to HPD and everyone who supported this effort to ensure that folks have the information that they need. This is a small piece, a step in the right direction. We still need a lot more work to do and to have it in language accessible ways. And so I'm just grateful to everyone for this work, and to be able to continue to put policies and fix things that ensure that New Yorkers are protected and supported fully, without barriers, but fully in language accessible ways, in literate ways, in any way that a New Yorker needs information. We as a city should be able to step up to that challenge and meet them where they are and provide what they all need with dignity and respect. And so thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. Councilmember Sanchez is here. I'm going to invite her to come to the podium and tell us all about her important legislation today.
My apologies, but thank you, Speaker. And congratulations to Councilmember Aviles for, I consider our bills twin bills or sister bills. Displacement following a fire or a structural emergency in your home is one of the most disruptive experiences a family can have. Imagine running for your life, barely remembering to grab your shoes, probably insufficient clothing if it's winter, and certainly you forgot your wallet, your identifying information, only to stand or sit on your sidewalk for hours looking up, not being sure what is next. This happens nearly 2,000 times per year across the city of New York. There are 1,952 all-hands fires with the potential to displace families. In New York City, we thankfully do have some processes designed to help New Yorkers through these destabilizing times. Gratitude always to our first responders who risk their lives to pull us out of fires and emergency conditions. The American Red Cross, per their contract with HPD, who visits fires and other emergency sites to help residents with emergency shelter and provisions in certain circumstances. And our agencies, from emergency management to the Department of Buildings and Housing Preservation and Development, FDNY again, who each have different roles to ensure that our buildings are safe and that there is some degree of interagency coordination. Yet for all that New Yorkers have, we can and must do better. On dozens of occasions in just my short 3 years in office, and I know this is true for my colleagues, I have visited fire sites, we all have, discovering problems. The Department of Buildings or the Department of Housing Preservation and Development didn't issue a vacate order when they should have. An apartment with no windows is the example that comes to mind. You can't stay there when it's 0 degrees outside and you have children. ARC wasn't notified. If there's no vacate order, the American Red Cross is not notified. And if it's not above 2 alarms, then the Department of Emergency Management also does not show up, and the same level of interagency coordination doesn't happen. So residents are left in limbo. And the displacement is long-lasting if you are displaced. In the first 4 months of this fiscal year, 2024, the average length of stay for single adults in emergency housing was 592 days. The average length of stay for adult families, 464 days, and the average length of stay for families with children, 337 days. And so that brings me to Intro 89, companion bill to Councilmember Aviles, Intro 6. This legislation would provide council members and key public officials with notification within 3 hours when there are fires that occur in their district, specifically all-hands fires. This is important because the bill is creating an infrastructure of redundancy, one that helps to stabilize New Yorkers and their families after a fire or tragic event by sharing information with key partners who can do wellness checks and more. This is personal for me, as my own family was displaced by a fire when I was just 3 years old. Left with nowhere to go, no one to turn to, except the flames consuming what had been our home. Thank you for taking this step with me, to my council colleagues and to our speaker.
You know, I always say that this council legislates personally, and I'm off script right now. The legislation that you all have seen from this council over the years directly reflects lived experiences by myself and my colleagues, and I hope that everyone in this room can appreciate that. I was in a fire myself at 5 years old, so can absolutely relate to this important legislation, as I hope so many New Yorkers can as well. Thank you so much, council members, for your legislation. Finally, we are going to vote on a package of bills from the Committee on Civil and Human Rights to acknowledge, study, and address the legacy of slavery and racial injustices that are its result in New York City. The legacy of slavery and systemic racism has impacted all facets of our society today, from housing and education to our physical, mental, and economic health. It is important that our city not just recognize these long-standing injustices inflicted on Black New Yorkers and communities, but that we take steps to redress these harms through potential remedies. As the first Black speaker leading the most diverse city council in our city's history, we have been intentional about confronting historic inequities perpetuated by systemic racism, disinvestment, and policies. We've advanced legislative solutions to create a more diverse diverse municipal workforce, address racial disparities in maternal and birthing health, address the disproportionate harms related to public safety, expand opportunities for MWBEs, and much, much more. We've also supported the work of the Racial Justice Commission and New York City Commission on Racial Equity and policy changes it produced by voter approval of ballot initiatives. Today's package of legislation, which will be coordinated with the New York State Community Commission on Reparations Remedies, marks the next step to advancing racial justice and equity in our city. It is what our city and communities deserve. We need honesty in understanding the historical legacy of slavery in New York City and its impact on New Yorkers, as well as a path towards healing, reconciliation, and repair. This council is proud to advance those efforts. First, Introduction 833A, sponsored by Public Advocate Jumaane Williams, would require the Department of Transportation to facilitate the installation and maintenance of an informational sign near the intersection of Wall and Pearl Streets in Manhattan to mark the site of New York's first slave market. I don't see, oh, there you are. Okay, how could I miss you? Come on up and tell us about your bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm sure the media is here just to talk about all these awesome bills that we have today, so thank you for that. Good afternoon again. Thank you, Madam Speaker, Chair Williams, and the council members, for bringing Intro 833A for a vote on the floor of the New York City Council and passing it from the floor, and hope the full council does the same thing. In Intro 833A would require the placement of a historical sign on the corner of Wall and Pearl Street, designate the location of the first slave trade market in New York City back in 1711. As so many places across the country are choosing to ignore our history rather than teach it, it's vital that New York City grapple with and learn from the parts of our past we too often try not to think about. The wealth of Wall Street banks was built on the backs of the human beings sold on that very spot, as was City Hall itself, and we have a moral obligation to accurately acknowledge not only the slave market's tragic history, the pain of enslaved people in our city, and the role slavery had in New York's economy, one which is echoed painfully across generations. So I'm thankful my council for ensuring that this is done the right way, helping New Yorkers as we still struggle with the impact of the damage done across centuries. I believe that there are many people trying not to get this history taught. I think people want to misinform and lie to people and use their fears against them by not being honest about the cost of our country, the cost of privilege and wealth that exists right now. And I think that's because people don't want to be honest about the cost of what it takes to maintain the same systems of privilege and the same system of wealth, particularly for the folks who have been feeling the brunt of it for so many years. And so in the context of all of these bills, I'm very proud to be a part of this package and thank this council for saying we're not going to ignore it. We're going to meet it head on, and we have to learn from it. I think if you are a physician trying to fix a patient and you're only trying to deal with the symptoms because you refuse to really go deep and figure out, well, what is causing the symptoms to occur in the first place, you'll never get that patient healed. There's a lot of things going on in our communities that we could stem right back to the systems and structures that were built on the backs of many of our ancestors. I always say that no one, black, brown, white, is responsible for the structures that exist today, but all of us are collectively responsible in addressing those systems and leaving better systems for our children and our children's children. It's very hard to do that if we try to ignore what the past is. Very often when people talk about slavery, they talk about the South, not understanding how impactful the institution of slavery and enslaved Africans were here in the North. And New York City is still one of the most segregated cities in the nation. And when we're talking about reparations and reconciliation, that's important as well. I'm looking forward to hearing those words. But I always want to say how important it is that we lead with justice and equity. And as a person of Caribbean descent, I am well aware that there are a lot of questions about who gets one where. Those are very real questions that have to be answered. That has nothing to do with whether we set up a task force to actually ask those questions and get them answered, which is what we have to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Public Advocate. Introduction 279A, sponsored by Councilmember Farrell Lewis, would require CORE to work with subject matter experts to study the historical and present-day role of New York City government in perpetrating or perpetuating slavery and related racial injustices, and to consider reparative measures for such injustices. The reparations study would document the harms of slavery and its legacies in the city, identify associated rights violations, and recommend potential legal, policy, and other measures to help remedy or redress associated harms. The study would also propose eligibility criteria for receiving reparations. CORE would coordinate with the New York State Community Commission on Reparations Remedies, and I do invite Councilmember Lewis to discuss her legislation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councilmember Farrah Lewis, representing Council District 45. I want to thank Speaker Adams for the opportunity. Sorry? Oh, you gave me. I want to thank Speaker Adams for the opportunity to elevate this piece of legislation and the entire package that's going to be voted on today, a pivotal moment in our city's history. This bill, Intro 279, mandates a comprehensive study on reparations related to slavery and its enduring legacies here in New York City, and is a testament to our commitment to acknowledging and addressing the deep-rooted injustices that have plagued our society for centuries. This passage of bills today is a monumental step towards addressing the persistent disparities that continue to impact Black communities. Throughout my tenure in the City Council, we have heard countless testimonies and conducted hearings revealing the ongoing impacts of historical injustices that affect New Yorkers, Black New Yorkers, and it is clear that the effects of past harms still resonate today. These legacies manifest in systemic inequities that disadvantage Black and brown people, especially Black and brown women, in both public and private sectors. The reparations movement is often misunderstood as merely a call for compensation for the enslaved Africans who built this country and this city. However, it is much more than that. The system of oppression did not end with the abolition of slavery. It has transitioned into various forms, including Black labor, exploitation, political disenfranchisement, social ostracism, and violent repression. Today, these injustices have perpetuated exploitation, exclusion, and subjugation of African Americans in our institutions. The passage of Intro 279 is not just the end of our journey, but a significant steps towards achieving justice. The study conducted by CORE in consultation with the Mayor's Office of Racial Equity will document and quantify the impacts of enslavement and its legacies, oppression, and discrimination. It will also recommend concrete reparative measures, including legal, policy, and fiscal redresses that address historical and ongoing harms. One of the most egregious manifestations of this ongoing injustice is redlining, which has corralled Black people into specific neighborhoods prevalent across our city. These areas suffer from environmental racism, underdeveloped infrastructure, as you heard Councilmember Felice stating earlier in his bill, food deserts, substandard housing, and underfunded schools. Black women in particular continue to face significant barriers that hinder their progress and well-being, often at the intersection of multiple forms of discrimination, making it even more critical to address compounded injustices. This is a matter of morality and justice, equality, and equity. I want to thank Speaker Adams for the opportunity again, Chair Williams for her steadfast leadership for our committee to change the direction of our city and equity in our communities, and I am passionately committed to working with my colleagues on these pieces of legislation moving forward. And I also want to thank Linda Tajani from CORE for her support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right, I want to make sure that I get Chair Williams in here. Introduction 471A, sponsored by Councilmember and Chair Natasha Williams, would establish a task force to consider the creation of a citywide New York City Freedom Trail and a Lower Manhattan Freedom Trail. The task force would be required to submit a report of its recommendations to the mayor and the council no later than 1 year after the task force is first convened. Okay, Councilmember Williams, Chair Williams, please tell us about your important legislation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and it's all good because we are one big happy Juneteenth package family, and I'm so proud that we're advancing this legislation. I just really want to take a moment to really thank the legislative division, because oftentimes we have a process in the council, we introduce bills, maybe we compile bills together, but in this case, at every step, we really were proactive. So I remember reaching out to the legislative division and saying, I want to compile bills that are focused on justice and equity. Some of these bills were not even yet introduced. And so we worked before the bills were even introduced to compile the bills together so that they would advance at once. And so thank you so much to Jeff Baker, Andrea, and of course my committee staff, Jessica. I also want to thank Linda Tagani and other members of the administration for also sort of pre-negotiating these bills before we actually got to the negotiation phase, because one of the things that was most important to the Speaker's office is that there was a true commitment from the administration to advance these pieces of legislation. A lot of these bills, we could have passed it, but if the administration didn't have a clear vision on how they would execute these bills, they really would just go nowhere. So I just really want to send tremendous gratitude once again to the central staff, specifically the legislative division and the Speaker herself. We gather not just to discuss legislation, but to address shared commitment, a commitment to truth, to justice, and to healing. The bills we are here to support that you have already heard are about much more than politics. They are about recognizing our history, understanding its deep and lasting impacts, and working together to chart a path forward. For over 200 years, the city of New York, like so much of this country, was built on the backs of enslaved Africans and indigenous people. It is an ugly truth, one that for too long many have been hesitant to confront. But today, through the actions of the New York City Council under the leadership of Speaker Adrienne Adams, we are taking steps to confront this history head on. The 4 pieces of legislation we're discussing represent a new chapter for this city, a chapter rooted in honesty, in reconciliation, and the hard work it takes to heal. The truth, healing, and reconciliation process that you'll hear in a second really is about documenting the legacies of slavery and its aftermath in New York City, not just about acknowledging what happened. Another bill that you just heard from Councilmember Lewis is a study of reparations. The bill that I am co-sponsor of is regarding a Freedom Trail Task Force that establishes a pathway that guides residents and visitors alike through the city's rich yet complex history, highlighting the sites tied to the abolitionist movement and the fight for freedom. We will honor their bravery. We will honor the bravery for those who fought against injustice, even in the face of tremendous adversity. Lastly, the installation of the marker that you heard comments from our public advocate will mark the site of New York's first slave market. Each of these pieces of legislation is a reflection of the values we hold dear: justice, equity, and community. We must show it in our policies, our actions, and our institutions. We must build the structures of our society to ensure that they serve everyone, not just a privileged few. I want to thank again, I'm full of gratitude, everyone that made these bills possible, and again, the Speaker for her leadership. To the advocates, community leaders, and all those who have worked tirelessly to bring us to this moment, know that your voices have been heard. Together, we are doing more than passing laws. We are affirming our commitment to building a better, more equitable future for all New Yorkers. The work won't be easy. The conversations ahead may be uncomfortable, but discomfort is a sign of growth, and growth is what we need right now. As we leave here today, I encourage each of you to take the lessons from these bills into your own communities. Speak the truth, engage in the hard conversations, and remember that healing is a journey, and it's a journey that we are on together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Williams. You know, this legislation, this legislative package should have happened a long time ago. It should not have taken this session of the New York City Council to make this happen, particularly now. Timing is everything, so when we take a look at it, I'm sorry, I'm going off again today, but I'm reminded of what's going on in Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, and those descendants that have once again been denied justice for what has gone on with their ancestors and how they were brutally murdered, and to see now in 2024 that it's taken this long for the New York City Council to produce a package of legislation that rightfully wraps justice into one package. Thank you to my colleagues. Introduction 242A, sponsored by Councilmember Crystal Hudson, would require the Commission on Racial Equity, or CORE, to establish a truth, healing, and reconciliation process in connection with the city's historic involvement in slavery and its present-day legacies. The objectives would be to establish facts about slavery in New York City and its ongoing legacies, protect and acknowledge affected persons and communities, and recommend changes for government and institutions to prevent recurrence and perpetuation of harm. I invite Councilmember Hudson to tell us about her legislation.
Thank you. And I just want to say before I give my formal remarks that, yes, it took us until 2024 to do that, but it's only under your leadership as the first Black woman of the Speaker of the City Council that we've been able to do so. So really, truly, you get as much credit as we do, so thank you for your leadership. I'm also taking note that I didn't get my box today.
You did not.
So I hope you can see me in the back. But good afternoon, and thank you again, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to speak on Intro 242A, which the Council is voting on today. It should be no surprise that our city is still reckoning with the long shadow cast by the enslavement of African and Indigenous American people and its enduring impact on Black Americans. Since slavery was banned in New York in 1827, our city still generated significant income from the illegal trade of enslaved people, and Black New Yorkers continued to experience racially motivated discrimination, riots, segregation, and violence. And these practices continue today. Black New Yorkers are 8 times more likely to be stopped by the police under suspicion of a crime because of nothing more than the color of their skin. Black homeowners in previously redlined neighborhoods are preyed upon by real estate speculators looking to trick them into signing away their homes, commonly known as deed theft. New York City must confront these injustices head-on and prioritize the needs of its Black residents to forge a path toward genuine equity and healing. When I first ran for office in 2021, I introduced a Black agenda for New York City, which outlined 6 recommendations to confront the urgency of the racial reckoning facing our city. One of these crucial recommendations was the proposal for a comprehensive citywide truth, healing, and reconciliation process to acknowledge the breadth of the historical mistreatment of Black New Yorkers and confront the city's racist practices. I'm proud that the passage of Intro 242A will make this a reality. And by passing 242A alongside Intro 279A, introduced by Council members Lewis and Williams, and a number of other bills, the City Council underscores its commitment to confronting and acknowledging the destructive racist policies that have harmed Black communities. The passage of these bills represents a monumental step forward, but our work is far from over. As city officials, we must continue to hold government accountable and push for transformative changes to create a more equitable New York City for all of its residents. I look forward to continuing to work alongside my colleagues in the council to dismantle the generations of systemic and structural anti-Black racism ingrained in our city. And I do also want to mention that policies, practices, and laws that uplift Black people uplift all people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Hudson. We are going to have to remember your box the next time you come up. Okay, that does conclude our stated agenda for today. And with that, we're going to take on-topic questions on today's legislative items first. But, you know what, let's go ahead and take on-topic questions before I say the other thing.
Yes, we'll start on topic on the bills.
On the bills.
On bills?
So you've probably seen other places try to do reparations, and when economists calculated what they would need to pay people for all the hardships that they had undergone, it was astronomical. Like, they couldn't even afford it. California, it was like $800 million, and their yearly GDP is $300 million. So people have said that it's unrealistic. What do you say to people who say that it's unrealistic? Like, if New York City finds out that they would have to pay millions of dollars they can't afford, like, then what is the point of like going through all of that?
I often ask those folks. Oh, sorry. My bad, Speaker. I often ask those folks, why is this the first part of the conversation? Financial restitutions is not what what we're doing right here with reparations is about. It's about having a conversation, putting together a committee. I asked those folks, why don't you wait on the process to start so we can have a real conversation? CORE is going to put together a committee of subject experts that will start this process, so they should trust the process.
Jeff? Have we heard from the mayor on this particular?
So I mentioned this before. When we introduced the bills, when we had a hearing, we actually started conversations with the mayor's side. So we've been in tons of conversations, work group meetings. The chair and executive director of the Commission on Racial Equity is here today. And the two bills, the reparations bill and the Truth and Reconciliation bill, are actually going to be under her purview. And she has a plan because we've thought long and hard about how to execute these bills. We also know that there's a state process. We took that into consideration. And so we do hope and anticipate that the mayor will sign the bills because we have been, I would say, very genuine, open, and transparent about our conversations and negotiations with the mayor's side.
It's been a good partnership around this legislation on both sides.
More on topic? Okay.
All right. Thank you, Julia. Before I take off-topic questions, I do want to address. There are a couple of elephants in the room today, though, but I'm gonna address the council's elephant in the room, because that's our business. I want to speak about Randy Mastro's withdrawal letter, all right? Mr. Mastro's withdrawal letter demonstrated why many in the city council did not ultimately trust that Mr. Mastro would represent all city officials rather than solely representing the mayor. A significant part of his record showed him to be a political loyalist, which runs counter to the independence and trust that is required of a corporation counsel. His answers at our hearing did not refute that concern, and his political attack on me and the council only reinforced his role as a political actor. From the outset, council members raised concerns about Mr. Mastro's record during the Giuliani administration, the only time that the nominee had government experience, and in his private legal career for their serious and lasting negative impacts on communities of color. The administration decided to ignore those concerns to move forward with his nomination anyway. We were transparent that choosing a corporation counsel, like choosing any attorney to represent you, requires more than simply meeting the baseline qualification of being a successful attorney. Council members sought transparency and clarity from Mr. Mastro and the parts of his record and work that raised concerns and were, quite frankly, sources of division. He did not provide answers that gave a sense of accountability, reflection, or independence from political loyalty. Ultimately, he failed to move members, falling short of earning the confidence and trust that he would be able to represent us, all city officials, and our entire city's communities to defy political loyalty in the public's best interests. As we look to turn the page and move ahead, we look forward to working with the administration, as we always have, to advance a unifying nominee within the ongoing 120-day deadline of filling the vacancy. We want to collaborate, as we always want to, as we typically have, to avoid a polarizing nomination and consider a candidate who has the trust of all city officials and can secure broad support. And with that, we'll take some off-topic questions. Hi, Michelle.
So I have a few for you. So Mayor Adams just announced that Tom Donlin would be stepping in as the acting police commissioner. Do you have any thoughts on that? I ask because it seems like you're skipping over what I understand to be the natural line of succession here, which would have put First Deputy Commissioner Tanya Kinsella in that acting role. And my second question is, do you think that Deputy Mayor Phil Banks and Tim Pearson should resign. And then my third question, sorry, is about the Chief Corporation Counsel. Is there a name that you would like to see the mayor put forward?
All right, Michelle, I'm going to respond to your first question first, since that is something that directly impacts the council. We have not discussed a specific candidate because we have been so enthralled in the work around Mr. Mastro. So we look forward to doing that together with the administration. As far as your questions pertaining to a new police commissioner, I don't have any knowledge or even expertise to speak about a chain of command, or to, speak about the natural progression or even the interim commissioner at this point, and we look forward to hearing more about that individual. What I do look forward to is, I guess, after the week that we've all had, the cessation of chaos that we've all had to deal with around several situations across the hall.
Madam Speaker, if I could, the police commissioner who resigned today,
Yes.
Jacob Back,
Yes.
in his statement, he said that the situation had become a distraction, and that's why he's resigned. Didn't give any other reason.
Okay.
In your view, does the resignation of the police commissioner end the distraction?
Who said that? Thank you for the question. I think that because of the magnitude of the situation and the number of investigations going on right now within the administration, the distractions are still going to be there. My hope is that with the commissioner choosing to tender his resignation, that does alleviate a little bit of the pressure and stress upon the NYPD at this time, and having someone else who is responsible to take care of the needs of the NYPD at this time. And as far as that distraction is concerned, my hope is that it is alleviated because of the resignation.
Talking about the sensation of chaos, I'm wondering if you feel like the mayor can continue, or does there need to be changes on that level? Do other people who have been subpoenaed need to resign? And then secondly, I'm wondering, have you noticed any change? The mayor says business continues as usual with the city. I'm wondering if you believe that to be the case, or have you seen in your work that this has become a bit of a distraction in getting done what you need to get done?
Thank you, Jeff. I can't really respond to any questions regarding resignations of individuals in the administration. That's solely up to the mayor and his team. As far as seeing any differences in the work, this is still relatively new, although very hot. So I cannot personally say, as far as my work, I don't know if my colleagues have any differences of opinion, but as far as my work as speaker, the nuts and bolts of the job in my district, I've not been impacted. The buzz has been more of what I think has impacted us more than anything else, the questions surrounding the hot topic of the day. I think that's been more impactful as far as folks wanting us to respond, as council members, as the body, the co-equal branch of governance at City Hall, more than anything else. But thankfully, I have not seen any direct impact upon my constituents, my district, or my work.
Madam Speaker, did you know that the police commissioner was going to be resigning today or at all? And with all of these investigations, how has that impacted your relationship, the council's relationship with the other side of City Hall?
I had not had any confirmation of any kind that the commissioner would be resigning. As far as any impact, again, I think the most impactful thing has been, the buzz around everything. I'm sure that my colleagues at my office has been contacted to give remarks and comments and interviews and everything else, but that I wouldn't call that a distraction for the council. The council is very laser focused on our work for our districts and our work for over 8 million people in the city of New York. Yeah.
you plan on endorsing Adams in the 2025 race? And at what point would you begin to call for his resignation?
Both of those questions are pretty much a no comment for me. I have not endorsed any candidate for mayor. I am wishing our mayor well. Nothing but the best of everything for him, and my heart does go out to him in this trying time for his administration.
Hi, good afternoon, Speaker. I know you said, back to the first question that was asked, that you don't have the, I think expertise was the word in terms of the natural order of things, but does it strike you as odd that we haven't heard, or that the council or you yourself may have not heard of Donlin or don't know much about him? What are your next steps, I guess, in that regard? And then also, with so much mistrust with, I guess, the mayor, the administration, what is your message to the city? How do we move forward?
Well, I don't, in all fairness, as far as Donlin is concerned, I'm not quite sure that even the rank and file understand or know him, much less, myself and my colleagues. So I'm going to deem that all fine and well in this particular process. And the message that I would have for New Yorkers is that this is still the best city in the world. I believe in this city. I believe in the history and the knowledge in this city, and I'm going to encourage all New Yorkers not to give up on this city. We have a lot to offer, and let's just stay focused on the work that we have to do as a city. This council is committed to doing our work as the legislative body of the city of New York. That is our job, and that's what we're going to continue to do. I do.
Whenever we asked the mayor or city officials about these FBI search warrants against the NYPD, against deputy mayors, they don't say much, and I think that's understandable. But questions we do have, and eventually some things will come out that they will have to answer for, and I say that to ask you, when that information is public, what do you want the council to do in its oversight role in terms of whether it's the NYPD or his deputy mayors? What are you planning to do once you get more information? And then relatedly on Tom Donlin, just a little refresher on who he is. I learned about him, former New York State Director of Homeland Security, FBI, counterterrorism in the New York Division. I think most notably, he's a total NYPD outsider. What do you think that says about the mayor and how he's handling this, for better or worse?
I'm going to leave the mayor's choices for the NYPD up to the mayor. So I'll leave that there. As far as what the council plans to do with any kind of discovery on the investigations, that's yet to be seen, so I cannot answer that. It's a bit hypothetical at this point. We have no information as far as these investigations are concerned, and what continues to be the theme here is that there has not been any wrongdoing shown as of yet. Hi.
There was a bill, sources told me that there was a bill that was supposed to be introduced in the agenda today that was pulled. It was Intro 346, which would decriminalize jaywalking. Is there any explanation that you have as to why that was pulled? Can you comment on that? And are you aware of any language that was changed in that bill and the writing it out? Is that something you're aware of?
Yeah, thank you for the question. The bill is still going through the legislative process, so basically what that means is that things are still being discussed. If there are any changes to the bill, those changes are being discussed. As far as specifics, I'm not at liberty to discuss if there are any at this point, just that the discussion is still being had around that legislation. Mm-hmm. Annie?
Thank you. Among the criticism that you referred to about how the council handled the Mastro hearing, criticism from the mayor, Mastro himself, at least some of his allies and Rudy Washington in one op-ed sort of made this connection between how the hearing was handled and the council's attempts to expand advice and consent, saying that this is proof why we shouldn't expand advice and consent. What do you make of that sort of argument and the connection being drawn by allies of the mayor?
Well, I understand allies of Mr. Mastro, of course. Their experiences are unique to them. Our questions in the hearing leaned heavily on his past experience with a prior administration, which in essence would be what he would be doing had his nomination been accepted by the council. As far as the advice and consent piece is concerned, we stand very strongly with the advice and consent. Quite frankly, we did give our advice not to put this nominee up because of what ultimately happened, which we discussed in private, actually played out in public for everyone to see. So advice and consent proved its point when it came to Mr. Mastro, and we would hope that my bill on advice and consent would have been heard, and taken up with the public had it not been for the Charter Commission at this point. But we believe very, very strongly in the expansion of advice and consent for the council. Thank you. Oh, we'll do that.